controversial issues such as the future of the European legislation on packaging for fruit and vegetables. My name is Carmen Cabra. I'm the editor of the magazine FruitToday, which you have on your seats. The event, organized by Pro Food, will be attended by Ron Lemaire, president of the Canadian Produce Marketing Association, Luc Van Noort-Beck, chairman of the Fruit and Vegetables Working Group of Copa-Cogeca, Philippe Pinard, general delegate of Freshfield Europe, Jean-Louis Moulin, vice president of AREF, and Aurelio Del Pino, president of ACEX, la Asociación de Cadenas Españolas de Supermercados. Now that we have met the guests, let's move on to each case, starting with Canada, a country considered to be at the forefront of the environment sustainability, a country that has had the wisdom to reflect and consider the voices of those who work directly in the sector. So, Ron, please, could you explain us the case in Canada, please?
Gracias. We're at a very interesting point in time. The Canadian market has been working on sustainability initiatives for many years. Where we are today on plastic packaging is unique, and it is a global discussion. In Canada, 5% of all plastic packaging is fresh produce packaging. Less than 2% of fresh produce packaging makes up all plastics. It is very little. Yet, we are a target and we are a focus of the global sustainability community on trying to find ways to reduce. Now, this isn't to say we shouldn't be doing the right thing, but the challenge we see globally and domestically in Canada is the term sustainability has been taken from us and driven by an activism that is focused only on singular elements within the broader sustainability topic. No longer is sustainability focused on environmental, social, and economic. It's linear in many thinking in one area. And I want to talk a little bit about the path we've gone in Canada to address this singular focus on how we can bring sustainability and plastic packaging and packaging in general back towards a more holistic and integrated strategy. If we look at the path, in 2019, Canada was a leader in supporting the development of the Oceans Plastics Charter. This was a sign for us at our organization to begin getting involved in plastic packaging and understanding what it meant for our industry. We formed a packaging working group and we began looking at how we as an industry bring together a strategy on sustainability. Not eliminating plastic, but identifying problematic plastics, identifying solutions to find sustainable alternatives, whether lightweighting, whether top seal. There's a range of different strategies we can put in place. And from there, we began working on tools that the industry could use to begin developing and implementing a strategy around sustainable packaging. And we have to remember, this isn't elimination of plastics, but this is how do we create a true circular economy that drives the materials and does not end up in waste. Now, the challenge we saw in Canada is the Canadian government began implementing plastic regulatory action. And what you would have all heard about is the Pollution Prevention Plan, which is a quasi-regulatory tool with a target of 95% plastic-free by 2028. This was an alarming objective for our industry. And we began working with government and our environment department to understand the science and rationale that they had to put this forward. The science wasn't there. They walked into a grocery store in many cases and saw oranges and apples in bulk and said, if these products can be in bulk, why can't the rest of the produce department be in bulk? So we took time to do research and create the documentation, as you see, to frame the rationale and the science on what you can do in packaging and the risk of going 95% plastic free or packaging free. It was catastrophic to our industry. Massive amounts of food loss and waste, small farms disappearing, and food security being an issue in the country. We provided this information to the government. We began working with multiple departments. Where we are today is very different, and I'll explain some of the pieces of how we've moved through the timeline from 2019 to today with a government that was singularly focused on an activist strategy as opposed to a sustainability strategy. So the first piece is a new report that we worked to enable the government to create. So our Department of Agriculture, working with environment, created a report that looks at the functionality of produce packaging. We have to remember, produce packaging has a function. Over 90% of what it does is achieved before the consumer even touches it. From the field, ensuring food safety, food quality, and logistics, to merchandising, marketing, and a range of other attributes that enable innovation and enable you as growers and shippers and packers to put new product in the market. The study did look at some key pieces that really did help resonate with the environmental department in Canada. And that's looking at those products that are robust and those products that are highly perishable. You cannot ship blueberries from Peru or from Morocco to Canada in a packaging that does not provide the security for that product to be able to make the distance to our marketplace. We were able to frame through this report, through the Department of Agriculture, a grouping that the environmental department was then looking at on how they can frame their thinking more effectively. Scenarios and trying to drive change is key. What the report did not do is look at food cost and did not look at global supply chains. But what it did do is begin changing their thinking in the department, which is key. These are the listings. I can answer questions on them later. They're not finalized, but it gives the starting point for us to be able to dive deeper into what is possible when 49% of fresh produce is sold in packaging, and what must be delivered in a produce package to address key attributes that the consumer demands. So what are the key factors we looked at in Canada to address a radical approach to eliminating plastics? Multiple departments. We can't do this alone. All of us globally, and then all of us within the fresh fruit and vegetable industry, from growers to retailers, have to be on the same page. We all have to understand the direction we need to go and the functionality of what the packaging provides. Our government departments, you cannot work with only one. Environmental departments, agriculture, commercial or trade, all play a factor in understanding because of the global flow of fresh fruit and vegetables and how packaging plays such a key role. And the key thinking around label or package once, ship anywhere. You need to be able to strategize in those same thinking. The next piece looks at advocacy. We have to keep our voice strong. We have to make sure everyone knows what the science and the rationale is of why we need packaging in our sector. Or we'll see increased prices, increased food loss and waste, increased food security in communities that need our products for health. We did another study in Canada, just wrapping up. When we see a decline in fruit and vegetable consumption, one serving decline is $1 billion in public health care costs. $1 billion. Without putting a strategy in place that enables Canadians or global consumers to access fruit and vegetables, we will see a decline in consumption and an increase in our healthcare costs. And I want to wrap up by saying the key piece here. Policy has to be clear and concise. Our strategy isn't about zero plastic packaging. It is about zero packaging waste. So how do we make sure we collect, recycle, reuse, and move our products into a system in an efficient, effective way so the public can get the products they need at the price they're willing to pay?
Thank you very much, Ron. Now we would like to know the opinion of Copa Cogeca. What are the actions that Copa Cogeca is putting in place around the PPWR, please? So please, Copa Cogeca.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you to have me here because this is an extremely important issue. If we look at our challenges as fruit and vegetable producers, the main challenges, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, are first of all improving consumption, because consumption is going down all the time. So we have to enforce this. We have to do better. Second, and that's a thing that it's really ununderstandable, it's the functioning of the internal market. Now I come back to PPWR regulation, and nobody can understand what happened. We as Copa Cogeca, we were for several years arguing that this is not the way to go, because fruit and vegetables is a healthy product. European Commission is telling us all the time we have to go for a plant. Philip will tell you plant diet, plant-based diet. So fruit and vegetables are crucial in this. No, they focused on packaging of fruit and vegetables in the European Union, although we are only 1.5% of the plastic packaging in Europe. So no, they wanted really to hit us. I don't know why, but it happened. Copa Cogeca always told them it's not the way to go. It's not the way to go because we have a special product. It's not mobile phones that we are selling. No, it's fruit and vegetables. It's perishable. It's delicate. We have to protect it to avoid, as the former speaker said, food waste. That's evidence-based. So nobody can understand. Second thing is, there came a regulation, and it was a kind of game between member states and the Commission. And at the end of the day, the result was terrible, because what they told us, they say, oh, you can continue with your own regulations, and in 2030 we will have a concise and definitive regulation to go on. But in the meantime, I am representing, from my country, from Belgium, the producers' organizations. It's unworkable. We can't work with this. We have to provide 5, 6, 7 different types of packaging to use all over Europe. So what are we telling now? And one of the promoters of this is here in the meeting room, is Mr. Batelli. He tells me all the time in the Working Party Fruit and Veg, we have to stay with our point of view. This is not a good regulation because it's bad for preventing food waste. It's bad for the functioning of the European unified market. So we have to back to the designer table, and we have to go back and we have to say we have to start all over again to prevent food waste, to promote consumption, to promote our products, and to better to improve the functioning of the European unified market. That's the thing we wanted to do. We will raise our voice to the European Parliament, but also to the Council, to the new Commission. This is a thing that has to be reconsidered in the interest of the farming community, but also of the entire food chain. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you very much. So now is the time of Philippe Binard, who represents Freshfel. So Philippe, what is Freshfel doing about the exception list? Please, can you tell us?
Yes, Carmen, I will tell you, but I think I have to put still at this point of the conference the topic in the bigger picture. I think we are in a sector which represents about 80 million tons, which have to go to the consumer in the best possible shape to be attractive product. We are in a sector which probably has the most advantage when we look at the 3 pillars of sustainability. The environmental one, we are very good. On the social one, it's good for the health. And we have to keep the competitiveness of the sector. And I don't think the packaging discussion has been in its focus. We need to sustain consumption. Luc have just mentioned, when we look at our data, the level of our consumption is below the minimum recommendation. And the minimum recommendation are health recommendation. And we need to raise our ambition from 400 grams to 800 grams to take into account the health and the environmental element. So how are we going to do that if we will not have the right tools to present the product to the consumer and to avoid the food waste and keep on the good parameter that we need on the environmental sustainability? And another element which is also very important, we are a sector which operates with tight margin, which in the food environment compete with sector which operate with very high margin. So any investment that we made need to be done with legitimate expectation of keeping the investment made for a long period and not having changing legislation all the time. So now moving progressively into the packaging discussion. The packaging discussion is part of a bigger package of legislation which finds its root not only in the Green Deal, but well before, when most of the countries around the world, including Canada, signed the Paris Agreement. And from that derive a number of steps that have been declined in the policy with different approach. In Europe, it was called the Green Deal, which was the important element which were made to comply, reduce the impact of the activity on the climate and try to rectify the things. Now, what we have seen is that the Green Deal has marked its own path, but there were also member states in Europe which were already doing things. In France, I think you have been the champions to go with the first step on the legislation. Then Spain have also taken legislation. So there were a little bit of disorder regarding packaging, and the objective of the Commission was to cement the legislation with a regulation. Unfortunately, we have seen that, we'll look in the moment with a number of examples, that moving into a regulation is not preventing all this proliferation of national legislation. So when we look at the new legislation on the packaging and packaging waste reduction, there were different objectives. Obviously, to avoid waste prevention on the packaging side. If you have different legislation, you need to pile up different packaging, and not all of them can be used. You need to have different reuse on different rule on reuse and refill, recycling, on labeling. So I think that was the common part of the legislation which will apply to all products, but then they've been adding one annex, which was a specific rule for fruit and vegetable, with this requirement of not having any packaging for all kind of packaging at 1.5 kilo or below. It has to be sold bulk. Then came the discussion with the Parliament, with the Council, and there, maybe as a compensation, we saw that the ban on all packaging, which was in fact the copy of the Spanish legislation, has been reduced to plastic only. So we could have been happy, but it's still not solving all the issue. Then we have therefore had to look more carefully in the fruit and vegetable sector, and that has been part of the discussion, influenced also by the complex and frustrating discussion in France about how do you establish a list? What are the criteria? Of course, there are criteria to reduce the loss of humidity, to prevent shock on the product, to preserve the product, but how do you define that? And that's where we are now, with a process of legislation which is not yet completely finished. And if you are not familiar with the European legislation, first of all, the Commission made a proposal to be discussed with the Parliament and with the Council. So we are at the end of this process. For the moment, both Council and Parliament are finalizing the the legal scrubbing and the adoption of the text. And then we'll start the second phase, which go back to the European Commission for the elaboration of the different technical rule, technical implementation, where we will be discussing how to implement the rule in our case for the ban of the plastic for the packaging. So why are we so much in favor of limiting that? Because we need to promote our product. We compete with heavily product which are ultra processed product, which have a brand that they can continue to promote. Unlike fruit and vegetable, will have more difficulty. We need to prevent the food waste, and if the products are being sold, we know that there will be more food waste in the shelf. So we need to inform the consumer, and we see also that we have a proliferation of requirements, not only reinforced requirement about origin, reinforced requirement maybe about environmental labeling or about nutritional labeling, or maybe other quality mark, with the funny things that maybe organic product will be the one to allow the preservation of the no segregation, to safeguard the segregation of the product between organic and conventional, that you will be allowed to continue to pack organic product, which is relatively absurd. We need to comply with marketing standard and make sure that the product remain intact down to the consumer. We need to maybe in the future have to comply, and this is very important, with the calculation of the footprint of the product, and with the compliance with the CSRD reporting, the corporate social responsibility reporting. And when we see and talk to company, it is very clear that maybe packaging is a better solution than a loose product. We will have more food waste or food loss, which will be then reported negatively in the footprint of the product. And I think we need to keep the competitiveness. Maybe having the product being packed is allowing to have a better return on the investment, which maybe have a better price for the down in the chain and also for the retail sale. So we have definitively today a situation of discrimination for the fruit and vegetable sector, which is the only food category which will have this kind of ban. And despite that, we were already very good. There are a lot of difference among the member states, but on average, we say that about 50% are already sold loose. So whenever we can, we do it. But the other 50% has a reason. Packaging has a cost. So if we pack the product, there is a reason to do that. We also, and Luc has mentioned, fortunately we handle the same kind of things. When we talk to retailer, the packaging of fruit and vegetables represent only 1.5% of their packaging. So this is not the solution to address the problem of packaging. So I think we have a lot of reason. Also, hygienic. If I will have made this presentation 3 years ago, after the COVID, there were really a search about having the convenience for the consumer, the security that the product were not touched. We know that when the product are presented bulk into the shelf of the supermarket, they will be touched on average 7 or 8 times before the one is taking the product down to home. So I think there are a lot of things which could explain and justify why maybe packaging in some of the case will be needed. And now I think the question of Carmen, and you will get nervous because I'm not responding to your question. So we still have to elaborate a list. So we have started to do the homework, and we have someone from DG Agri, which have also advised us, and they are our ally in the Commission to do the work on the list. So how do we make the list? So there are probably about 500 products which might justify one way or the other to be packed. If you go with the diversity that we have in the sector, it's a huge work. And then I will go a little bit more further. I will take one example of one product. I will take kiwi. Maybe the kiwi, the green kiwi, does not need any packaging, can be sold loose. The yellow kiwi they are already more sensitive. So probably it's justified to have a packaging. I will take the red kiwi, which is now a new category, which is even more softer, will need a packaging. And then if I take baby kiwi, for sure they need it. So I think that's the complexity, and we will have, as a sector, to justify product by product. Why is it? Is it a problem of the quality conservation? Is it a problem of loss of the humidity? And then we'll take another example. We take cucumber from Almeria. They have to go to Madrid. Maybe they don't need to be packed by a plastic thing, but they go to Helsinki, maybe yes. So how do we segregate between a cucumber which will have a different destination? So the work is quite impressive. So the calendar for this, so now we have the adoption, the ban will be 2030. So in the meantime, we'll have to elaborate the list. In the meantime, we will still have to navigate with the different national legislation. The French law is really under trouble for the moment. The Spanish law, we don't know whether they will keep it for all packaging, but we could end with a situation where we will have maybe a complete ban in Spain, and other countries will have selective ban if they follow the European legislation. So a lot of work to do, a lot of work that has to be placed in the new focus that we will have for the next European legislation. The last term was Green Deal, now it's competitiveness. So we have to secure that the fruit and vegetable sector has the right tool to operate in a competitive environment, to make sure that we can raise the consumption of fruit and vegetable on an equal element of competition with the other agri-food product. And I will finish here my little response to your question, Carmen.
Thank you very much, Philippe. I remember 7 minutes each one, please. Okay. We would like to know the opinion of Jean-Louis Mullen, who represents RF. What will be the impact on day-to-day operations in the supply chain, please?
Merci. Donc,
Yes, he will answer in French, and I will provide the translation in English.
Merci à vous. On pourrait sans doute tous se répéter sur ces thèmes. Pour répondre précisément à votre question, je repartirai au point de départ, qui est la production. Nous sommes d'abord des producteurs de fruits et légumes et nous travaillons pendant une année pour avoir des produits d'exception exemplaires.
So, to reply to your question, I will start by the first step of the supply chain, which is production, because we represent an association of producers working any year to provide our consumers with a high-quality product.
Deuxième point, ces produits de fruits et légumes sont travaillés dans des stations fruitières avec du matériel high-tech qui nous permet de séparer différentes qualités, différentes couleurs, différentes grosseurs, etc., etc., dans un seul but, de satisfaire le consommateur final.
So our producers work employing the most cutting-edge technologies to recognize and separate the produce by size, color, level of freshness. And this is only looking at our first concern, which is, again, quality.
Arrive effectivement une partie de la réponse par rapport à votre question. Après ces deux grands thèmes, nous arrivons au transport des produits. Et nous avons depuis des décennies travaillé et réfléchi à des emballages différents pour justement maintenir la qualité du produit, la non-perte du produit dans le transport, la satisfaction, je le répète toujours, du consommateur à la fin et parfois même l'augmentation de consommation grâce à des emballages et grâce à l'innovation dans l'emballage.
So moving from quality, another of the fundamental point is transport, because we want to make sure that our produce arrive to the consumer with the less amount of wastage and in the best conditions, and this is why we are always committed to innovation.
On ne peut pas aujourd'hui, d'un coup de crayon, supprimer, je veux dire, tous les emballages ou le plastique. On trouverait des produits, je veux dire, en en vrac dans les magasins, dans lequel le consommateur ne sait même plus si c'est un oignon ou une échalote, si c'est une pomme ou une poire, ou un pamplemousse ou une orange. Donc on doit effectivement continuer cette traçabilité qui va jusqu'au consommateur. En tant que producteur, c'était de notre responsabilité depuis des décennies. On tient à continuer et à avoir cette responsabilité toujours dans les années à venir, sans avoir une obligation qui la supprime, qui amène le danger. Je rappelle qu'il y a quelques années, quelques mois, nous étions dans une situation tous avec des masques, dans lequel on ne pouvait même pas s'embrasser ou se donner une poignée de main. Et vous allez aujourd'hui laisser des fruits ou des légumes avec des dizaines de mains qui ont touché ces produits, remué ces produits, et souvent pas achetés, parce qu'on va les remettre dans le mauvais endroit qui va abîmer ces produits. Donc augmenter la perte des produits. Pardon.
Yeah, of course. We all gone through the recent COVID experience where, of course, we have gone through so many restrictions, and it's just something that has already been reminded. It's really incredible how much now safety is becoming so not that important when it comes to our fresh produces, and the fact that people can just touch them, and this is apparently no longer a concern. Just for the beginning, he was saying that, of course, for producers, they feel the responsibility for that. They feel the responsibility to combine together health and security issues with sustainability.
Effectivement, on peut le rappeler, les fruits et légumes sont le seul produit qui va du champ, du verger, je veux dire, au consommateur final. Je veux dire, il n'y a pas de transformation. Donc, on doit respecter ces emballages qui nous permettent, je veux dire, de certifier, de valider ces produits par rapport à nos différents terroirs, nos différentes qualités. Et un point extrêmement important, nous sommes aujourd'hui, depuis plusieurs années, dans une diminution de la consommation des fruits et légumes, dans un problème même médical, d'obésité, parce que les jeunes en mangent de moins en moins. Nous sommes dans l'innovation avec des emballages plus petits, qui permettent des achats de gens qui sont seuls chez eux, etc., pour des enfants. Donc tout ce travail-là est fait pour le consommateur, pour l'augmentation de la consommation.
Well, legislation has to recognize the specialty of our sector, which is that we are one of the very few sectors for which the produce comes from the field to the supermarket, and in theory should come and arrive in the same exact state. So that's why for us package is really, really a concern. This is why we are really much involved into innovation. And la dernière partie.
Et je finirai sur un point, effectivement, c'est l'innovation. Je veux dire, nous avons toujours innové dans nos produits. Et si, effectivement, on va en vrac demain nos produits, on vendra de l'oignon en vrac. Mais ces produits qui sont spécifiques, qui sont faits, je veux dire, dans de l'innovation, qui sont avec un emballage obligatoire. Enfin, je crois que c'est de l'ail noir, effectivement. Donc, il y a un travail spécifique. Donc, on doit aller... L'innovation nous a permis d'aller vers de nouveaux consommateurs. Donc, une augmentation de la consommation des fruits et légumes. Demain, cela n'existera plus. Et dessus, il y a 2 ans de recherche. Donc, je prends cet exemple qui va permettre d'être l'exemple de toute la filière fruits et légumes. Donc, je suis remonté à la consommation. J'arrive aux besoins indispensables, effectivement, de l'emballage. Et ce n'est pas du sans emballage. Et nous sommes également dans la recherche de l'amélioration de l'emballage. Nous avons toujours su améliorer l'emballage au niveau de nos filières. Donc, nous sommes bien sûr pas des défenseurs de l'emballage, mais des défenseurs de qualité de produit dans des emballages qui seront innovants et qui ont toujours été innovants. Merci à vous.
We are not only talking about, when we talk about packaging, we also talk about health. And as again, every of the speakers reminded how important it is. This is a package of black garlic, which could not exist without plastic packaging. And of course, this is years and years of research to find the right size, the right number of grams that consumers are willing to pay and to consume weekly or monthly. So this is something that regulation should really take care, because they should also be aware of the fact that these changes can have a huge impact on our chain and on the safety condition of our consumers, on health. in the end. So thank you all for listening to us. And
Thank you very much. So, Aurelio Del Pino, president of the Spanish Association of Supermarkets, will give us the point of view of the Spanish supermarkets. Hola, Aurelio. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carmen. Good evening for us. First of all, I do apologize for not being in the print program because I was not able to confirm my presence here since last Friday. So first of all, apologize. Also apologize because I was prepared to make my speech in Spanish, and probably some technical terms I will not manage well. So first of all, apologize. I will begin. Sorry, just a minute. I will take my water because it's the fourth intervention as speaker in this fire, and I have my voice a little bit. But the complexity of the legal framework in Spain and in the European Union is very huge. We have a lot of complexity and uncertainty in the way of defining terms. And us, as supermarkets, we have to guarantee the compliance with all the European and national legislation. So we have a lot of concerns, very huge concerns about a lot of things, not only for the specific packaging of fruit and vegetables, but also with a lot of terms that imply also the industry of fruit and vegetables, as the obligations of reduction of plastic and rest of materials, the objectives of recycling, the objectives of reuse, the objectives of commercial packaging. We have a lot of items, a lot of challenges defined by the European legislation and also Spanish legislation. We had years ago a huge problem with the single-use plastic directive, and I had speeches here with the Spanish producer FEPEX to explain the consequences of those legal obligations in the commercialization of fruit and vegetables. But I will try to go into the floor specifically with fruit and vegetables. We had a lot of items that we have to define, not only the ban of plastic, because the concept of the packaging is much more that we are thinking about, because we have sticky of labels in the fruits. We have the different ways of making packaging of fruits, like rubber robes and all these kind of packaging that are very used in fruit and vegetables. We have the definition of the type of materials, but first of all we have a problem as the definition of plastic in itself, because with the European legislation of single plastic use directive and Spanish legislation, all plastics are the same. We have no difference with normal plastic, fossil plastics, and plastic of bio-based materials. We have no differences in the obligations, in the rules between plastic fossil and plastic organic. We have of plastic compostable. So we have no choice to try to research about different materials. We have only one definition of plastic, and this applies to all the plastics, with more problems, because we have different products, not only fruits and vegetables, but very related with fruits and vegetables market, like juices of fruits or juices of vegetables, that also in the legislations obliged to make reusable packaging. So all the supply chain of all the producers of fruit and vegetables are very concerned by all the issues of legislation. But going more to the problems in itself, we have two differences between Spanish legislation and PPWR legislation. Is that in Spanish we have yet the prohibition of using of any kind of plastics, any kind of packaging, not only plastic packaging, but any kind of material of packaging for fruit and vegetables of less than 1.0 kilos. But the Spanish legislation let us, after having working a lot with the Spanish Federation of Producers and all the retail sector, we have some criteria that can be used to avoid the ban or to justify the use of packaging. And those criteria are the organic products, because to sell organic products mixed with conventional producers' products are not always possible, and they can mix it, and we have not the label of the organic production. We have a way to avoid the ban if you are protecting a special variety and registered variety of product. We have the exemption for some products which are in, I'm making the translation, sorry, of territorial differential denominación de origen protegida. Carmen, échame una mano. Of origin protected products, and in the criteria of the losing of the quality of the products. And those criteria are not the same as the criteria that are used now in the last version of the regulation of packaging in Europe, because the criteria in Europe are food safety, protecting against hurts or deforming, oxidation, and the mix with, and if you cannot guarantee the mixing of the commercialization with organic products and traditional production products. So what the regulation says that in some cases that would be included 24 months after the entry into appliance of the directive, the Commission will make a guidelines, and is this guidelines we can find the way to make the interpretation of this criteria, and with this criteria, member state can or not, they can make the exception or they cannot make the exemptions. So I think we have the real challenge is for all the food supply chain of fruit and vegetable to find a way to combine the best of two regulations in the case of Spain, and in the case of some legislation that's also entering into force in some countries like France. So I think which the representatives of Freshfell and Copa Cogeca and producers and retailers with our association Eurocommerce and the rest of the supply chain, we have to work very hard, because during the discussion of the regulation, we have found in our contacts with public responsibles, mostly in the parliament, that the issue of the ban of the plastic is very difficult to fight with. So we have a huge challenge. I put my associations and the rest of association of Spanish retail in all disponibility to work with you, and I hope that the results of the guidance will be such satisfactory as for us as we are hoping. So thank you very much, and apologize again.
Thank you very much, Aurelio. To finish this session, I would like to have a conclusion from Mauro Salini, President of Pro Food, the Fresh Food Packaging Producers Group. Please, Mauro.
Thank you very much, Carmen, and thank you to all the speakers. I think it was good to hear from all the supply chain, from the suppliers to the retailers, that we all agree that this regulation is wrong. It's wrong for different reasons. It's wrong because, as we said, it is a negligible part of the packaging that we have, for which we have a discriminatory law. There was an impact assessment on this regulation, which was justifying this choice. And moreover, as Philippe already said, all the market has already balanced the use of packaging where it was needed or when we could use something different than plastic. So there was really no need for this law. As a Pro Food, we promote two kinds of action on two tracks. One was to work on the exemption list to limit as much as possible the negative impact of this wrong law. And the second one is to work anyway with the politics to change the mind and change this regulation. It will be a long way to go, but we still believe it's possible. Canada has demonstrated that it's possible. So we just hope to have flexible and listening politics as they have in Canada, but I'm not sure. So thank you to everyone for participating to this event, and a big thank you for all the speakers. Thank you. And thank you, Carmen.